The Girl Who Crossed the Jungle. In a forgotten corner of the world, where the roads ended and the jungle began, there stood a tiny village called Nurpur. The villagers believed the forest surrounding them was alive. Not alive like trees and birds. Alive like memory. The elders said the jungle listened. That it watched. That once it took something from you, it never truly gave it back. Children were warned never to wander too close to its edge. Especially during the rain season. Especially alone. But children rarely understand fear until life teaches it to them personally. And 7-year-old Amina understood almost nothing about fear. She understood birds. She understood sunlight dancing on river water. She understood the warmth of her mother's hands and the deep laughter of her father after long days working in the fields. But fear. Fear had not yet introduced itself. Amina lived in a small mud-brick house at the edge of Nurpur with her parents, Yusuf and Maryam. They were poor, but like many poor families, they carried riches invisible to the world. Love. Every evening, after sunset painted the sky orange, Maryam would sit outside with Amina beside the cooking fire. And every evening before darkness fully arrived, she would repeat the same warning. Never go into the jungle. Amina always nodded. But curiosity is stronger than obedience when you are 7 years old. Especially for a child who believed every bird song was a secret waiting to be discovered. The day everything changed began with rain. Heavy rain. The kind that turned roads into rivers and covered the jungle in silver mist. Amina stood outside their home watching the storm when she noticed something fluttering near the trees. A white bird. Its wing looked injured. It hopped desperately across the wet ground before disappearing into the jungle. Amina hesitated. She remembered her mother's warning. But the bird looked helpless. And children often mistake kindness for safety. So she followed it. At first, the jungle felt magical. Raindrops shimmered on giant leaves. The earth smelled alive. The bird remained just ahead, disappearing and reappearing through the trees. Amina kept walking. Then the rain grew heavier. The light dimmed. And suddenly, the bird was gone. Amina stopped. Everything around her looked the same. Trees. Mud. Darkness. Silence. Her tiny chest tightened. "Mama," she whispered. Only thunder answered. Back in Nurpur, Maryam realized something was wrong the moment she could no longer hear Amina's voice outside. By sunset, the village was searching. Men carried lanterns deep into the jungle. Women prayed beside flickering candles. Yusuf screamed his daughter's name until his voice became raw. But the forest gave no reply. Hours became days. Days became weeks. And slowly, painfully, the village accepted what nobody wanted to say aloud. The jungle had taken her. But the jungle had not taken Amina. Not yet. Lost, hungry and terrified, she wandered through endless trees for 2 days. She drank rainwater from leaves. She slept beneath roots while strange animal sounds echoed through the darkness. More than once, she cried herself awake. Her small feet bled from sharp stones and thorns. Still, she kept walking. Because somewhere deep inside her, hope refused to die. Then on the 3rd morning, just as sunlight pierced the trees, Amina saw something impossible. Smoke. Thin gray smoke rising in the distance. Civilization. Life. She ran toward it with the last strength she had. Beyond the jungle stood another village hidden from the world. Smaller than Nurpur. Poorer too. And sitting outside a wooden house at the village edge was an old man named Karim. He saw the little girl collapse face first into the mud. Without hesitation, he rushed toward her. Karim had once been known as the happiest man in the village. Years earlier, he had a wife and a daughter. But sickness came one winter. And sickness took both. After that, Karim rarely smiled. He lived alone. Spoke little. Worked quietly. Until the jungle delivered Amina to his doorstep. When she finally woke, she panicked. "Where's my mother?" Kareem gently handed her warm soup. "You're safe now," he said softly. For days, he searched nearby villages asking if anyone had lost a child. But the jungle between Nurpur and Kareem's village was enormous. No roads connected them. No travelers crossed it. Eventually, Kareem understood the truth. Nobody was coming. And somewhere in his aging heart, a painful emptiness began filling again. Amina stayed. At first, she cried every night for her parents. Kareem would sit quietly beside her until she fell asleep. He never promised her impossible things. Never said, "They'll come tomorrow." Instead, he taught her something stronger. "How you survive pain," he once told her, "decides who you become." Those words stayed with her forever. Years passed. Amina grew taller, stronger, smarter. She attended the tiny village school where children shared torn books and broken pencils. But unlike the others, Amina studied as though her life depended on it. Because somewhere inside her, she believed it did. Every night, while other children slept, she sat beneath candlelight reading whatever books Kareem could find. Old science books. Discarded newspapers. English dictionaries missing half their pages. Sometimes villagers laughed at her. "A doctor," they mocked. "From this village." But Kareem never laughed. "You keep going," he told her. "One day the world will regret underestimating you." When Amina turned 16, fate arrived wearing dusty boots and carrying a medical bag. A charity doctor from England visited the village during a vaccination campaign. Dr. Helen Carter had worked in some of the poorest places on Earth. But she had never seen a girl like Amina. The teenager translated medical instructions faster than local teachers. She understood anatomy from old textbooks she had taught herself. And when a frightened child needed stitches, Amina calmly assisted the doctor without fear. That night, Helen asked her, "Where did you learn all this?" Amina smiled shyly. "Books." Helen stared at her in disbelief. Then she asked the question that changed everything. "If you had the chance, would you study medicine?" Amina answered immediately. Yes. Not because she wanted money, not fame, but because somewhere in her memory still lived the helpless little girl lost in darkness wishing someone would save her. The scholarship took nearly 2 years to arrange. Paperwork, exams, interviews, endless obstacles. But Amina refused to quit. And at 18 years old, carrying a single suitcase and Kareem's old scarf, she boarded an airplane for America. New York overwhelmed her immediately. The noise, the crowds, the towering buildings. For weeks, she felt like she had landed on another planet. Her accent made people stare. Her clothes looked simple compared to everyone else. Some classmates assumed she would fail. But they did not know the jungle she had crossed. Compared to survival, exams were easy. So Amina worked harder than anyone. She studied through exhaustion, worked part-time jobs, slept little, cried secretly when homesickness became unbearable. But every time she wanted to give up, she remembered Kareem's voice. "How you survive pain decides who you become." Years later, she graduated near the top of her class. Then medical school. Then surgical training. Then specialization in cardiac surgery. At 32 years old, Dr. Amina Kareem became one of the youngest leading heart surgeons in New York. Patients trusted her because she carried something rare. Compassion born from suffering. Despite her success, Amina never forgot where she came from. Photographs of Kareem sat inside her office. Every month she sent money back to the village. And every year she returned to visit the old man who had saved her life. But one question always haunted her. What happened to her real parents? Were they alive? Did they ever stop searching? Or had time buried her memory completely? She never knew. Until one winter evening. The hospital emergency room exploded into chaos after an elderly man collapsed from severe heart failure. Doctors rushed him into surgery preparation. Amina reviewed the patient file quickly. Male. 63 years old. Foreign visitor. Condition critical. Then she froze. Place of birth. Nurpur. Her hands trembled slightly. Nurpur. The village she had not heard mentioned in 25 years. A strange feeling rose inside her chest. When the patient was wheeled into the operating room, the old man looked terrified. Then his eyes stopped on her face. Something changed in his expression. Confusion. Shock. Recognition impossible to explain. Amina noticed him staring at her wrist. At the tiny crescent-shaped birthmark she had carried since childhood. The old man began crying. "Amina," he whispered weakly. The world stopped. Her breath vanished. Nurpur. The birthmark. The trembling voice. And suddenly she knew. Baba. Tears flooded his eyes. It was Yusuf. Her father. The surgery lasted 6 hours. And not once did Amina's hands shake. Because this was no longer just another patient. This was the man who had once carried her on his shoulders through village fields. The man who never stopped searching. When the operation succeeded, nurses celebrated quietly. But nothing compared to the moment Yusuf woke up. Father and daughter sat together crying for hours. He told her everything. How he and Miriam searched for years. How her mother lit a candle for her every night until illness took her away. How Yusuf never fully lost hope. And Amina told him everything too. The jungle. Kareem. America. Medicine. The life she never expected to live. Weeks later, Yusuf finally met Kareem through a video call. The two old men stared at one another silently for a long moment. One had lost a daughter. The other had lost his daughter. And somehow, through unimaginable pain, life had connected them both through the same child. "Thank you," Yusuf whispered. Kareem smiled gently. "No," he replied. "Thank her. She crossed the jungle herself." Years later, people would call Dr. Amina Kareem extraordinary. They admired her brilliance, her achievements, her story. But they never truly understood what made her remarkable. It was not the awards. Not the hospital titles. Not even the surgeries. It was this. A little girl once disappeared into darkness. And instead of letting darkness define her, she carried light all the way through it.